Welcome to the Celtic Huddle podcast. I'm Mark Wilson. I'm joined today by the Celtic legend Murdo McLeod. In another dramatic 7 days, we'll look at outgoing Chief Exec Peter Lawwell's contribution to the club and the impact his replacement Don MacKay could make. We'll also look closely at the contribution of the Celtic first team players after several of them, including Leigh Griffiths, were called out by manager Neil Lennon after Saturday's woeful 2-1 defeat to St Mirren. We'll also be joined by Derek McGregor from the Scottish Sun and John McGarry from the Scottish Daily Mail. Both journalists have followed Celtic's season closely and will give us their inside view. Derek and John will review the media coverage and what the pundits and former players have been saying. Also, get your comments in once again. And myself and Murdo will try to read out as many as we can, but we really want to hear from you, the Celtic fans, especially after that defeat at the weekend. Your points on Peter Lawwell leaving the club, what state he's left the club in, and Don MacKay coming in. Get your points in. We'll have a look at them throughout the show and read as many as we can. And I'm delighted to say once again, the podcast is now sponsored by First Star Legends Gin, First Class Transfers and Social Recluse. We thank them all for their support. So, Murdo, let's get to it. No time to waste once again, because there's never any shortage of talking points on this podcast since we started. But the weekend defeat to St Mirren, Neil Lennon says it was the lowest point of his Celtic managerial career. What did you make of it?
Well, it's just backing up what's happened over the last 2 or 3 months. You know, the performances have been terrible. The attitude's been terrible of players on the pitch. I know over the time we've been talking about the board, the scouting people, everyone else bar the players. But the players now, they've got to look at themselves. And it's getting to the stage they possibly looked at themselves and thought, we're no good enough to play for Celtic. And I think that's maybe the big problem.
So the majority of the players that are in the squad just now, not good enough to get Celtic to where they should be or where they want to be.
Because you can look at other teams playing good football, scoring goals, even under pressure, get all 3 points, get it in the bag, and that's it. Celtic are out there, and the players, we've got half a dozen there that will still fight away. You've got McGregor in there, and you've got Christie will still do a wee shift for you up and down the park. But throughout the whole team, there's too many players. Their attitudes, they're not going into challenges to try and get the ball off the opposition. St Mirren coming to Celtic Park, and first victory at Celtic Park since 1990. It's a long time, and it tells you that Celtic weren't up for it. And that you're looking at the squad, and I know that it's changed one or two players, but it's mainly the same squad. It's getting different chances, and they're all getting different chances, or this is the night, and it's not happening.
No.
And if it doesn't happen, and it's, as I said, it's making it easier for Rangers to go and win the league title.
Well, I mean, my argument would be I think the players are good enough, but it is alarming. I get your point. It is alarming Saturday's show in terms of, I don't question that they're trying, but it just seems to be an acceptance, defeat sometimes. Now, how many years, listen, your era, partly my era as well, when I was a supporter, that when Celtic were getting beat at home, the last 15, 20 minutes, they would be bombarding the opposition goal. And I think too many times this season, we've seen that when these guys fall behind, good players in my opinion, top players in my opinion, they've just not got that bite to drag themselves out a hole. And that's the worrying thing. I don't think there's many leaders. Scott Brown has been out the side recently, and I wonder where the other leaders are to drag.
Yeah. Well, that used to be the thing, watching, because I played for Celtic for 9 years. Then I was in the media side after, once my football career had finished, I was in the media. I was at Celtic Park every week, and you would watch them, and they'd be battling away, and the quality of the opposition was much better than it is just now. And they're maybe up against Celtic, or maybe it's a draw, and Celtic will pushed the full 90 minutes right to the end, and the amount of people that would come up and talk about it at Celtic scoring goals with 2 minutes into added time and all that kind of thing. 90th minute. That used to be the in thing for Celtic.
That was the norm.
It was normal. When was the last time it happened?
Well, we don't get it, and that's why I was concerned. I've been concerned against St Johnstone, Ross County as well. There was no late push that you actually believed. I'm sitting watching that game on Saturday thinking, I don't actually believe that that's going to happen. But on the players themselves, I mean, just a bloke here. Here's a tweet, first one in. Ironically, we need something similar to what Neil did his first full year. Clear out the old guard and get new hungry players needed. Now, that brings me on to my next point. I mean, I can only imagine what the atmosphere around Lennoxtown is like just now. It can't be great. I've been there under the Tony Mowbray era, season 2009, 2010.
What was it like then when you were there? What was
I'll be totally honest. It was probably one of the worst spells of my entire football career. Now, I had been in relegation battles with Dundee United, quite a few of them. And there was nothing like the atmosphere that surrounded Lennoxtown at that time. Now, Tony was a nice guy. I think he's shown over the years that he is a good coach, and he's had success with other teams. But for whatever reason, at Celtic at that time, didn't quite work. I don't think he had to connect with the players. I know for a fact there was unrest with several players. If you looked at what Tony tried to do when he came in, he tried to kind of disband Gordon Strachan's team and build his own team pretty quickly, when you could probably argue there wasn't much wrong with guys like Stephen McManus and Gary Caldwell and things like that. Good players who were kind of put to the side. Barry Robson, another one, and things like that. So there was disconnect there right away, and you could see it eking in to performances every week. But going to training, there was a genuine dread of going to training, and that should never be the case. That's what happened round about Lennoxtown at that time. Just didn't enjoy it, and I wasn't the only one.
That was one of the kind of best parts of your life, every day in life, going to training at Celtic Park or Barrafield in my day and all that kind of thing. But going to Lennoxtown, great facilities there, and when you've got great facilities there and you're out there and you're pinging a ball, you're desperate for the next game to come up.
Well,
whereas at that time, everything was flat.
It was, and the similarities, well, I can only imagine the similarities are quite striking, as well as I see on the pitch. I mean, we had players who came in on loan at that time, or players who were signed in the summer who, again, I would argue that they were good players, but just, I don't think they got the full thing, what it meant to win at Celtic. The expectations to win every week. I mean, I suppose you could say that the left back that Tony brought in at that time, Edson Braffide, people who remember him from Bayern Munich, played in a World Cup final. He was on reported 50, 60 grand a week, came on loan to us. Good player, but didn't quite understand it. Is there similarities with Lax out there, who's came from AC Milan, and he's done okay, but he looks to be disinterested at times. And we had other guys coming in, at the top end of the pitch, that again I don't think really understood what it meant to be an ultimate goal scorer at that time, and I think the similarities are striking. That's why I bring up what the atmosphere must be, and it's very, very difficult to get away from that. But the point just made there about clearing all them out, and Neil came in after Mowbray and cleared them out and got in players who really wanted to fight, good players but scrappers with ability, and it worked. And that's probably what's needed. But was he right to have a go at the players? Because the first time around when he did it against Ferencváros, I agreed with that. I thought the players needed a blast, and it was at the start of the season where you could get a reaction. Was there something different about Saturday? It seemed to be a total disconnect between him and the players when he says, they've let me down, and they've let me down for a long time. Is there any coming back from that and repairing your relationship with him?
I think the relationship then is really tight now for Neil to get any of the players where he's just had a real go at them, because it's beginning to happen every week now. He's got to come out and then he's fighting with all the press, about his own job and all this kind of thing, and then the players having a go at the players. When you're a football player, in our day, you were fighting for everyone. You were fighting for the fans. You were fighting for your teammates. You were fighting for yourself. You were doing everything to try and get a victory. No matter who you were playing, and you always felt you could beat any team. Any team that turned up at Celtic Park, you were going to you had in your thoughts you'd beat them. And just what we spoke about earlier on, if you were behind, you'd pull up your sleeves even more, looking for a fight in the last 10 minutes to try and get an equaliser, try and get a winner or something like that. That team just now, if they feel as though it's not happening, they switch off.
Yeah. They look a spent force just now. Now, just quickly here, a lot of fans may have thought January coming up, let's go into this window and let's revamp this squad as best we can. Let's get a bit of energy and life into it. But the window has been quiet enough. One in, John Joe Kenny in, Frimpong and Cham away.
Yeah.
Celtic need the right back, but in Cham, surprised that he's went?
No. Because obviously he wasn't getting a game. I don't know whether he was one of the ones that it wasn't part of Neil's plans.
Yeah.
Because he is a decent player. But again, you think he should be in the middle of the park just now. He should be the one, and he's not getting a chance.
Yeah.
So obviously there's things, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. All the fans are sitting there and everybody's got their own opinion, what's happening at Celtic Park. But in Cham, when he was at his best, he was a very good player. He nicked the odd goal and all that kind of thing, but he would pass it, he would get into challenges, he would retrieve the ball, he would get it. But now you watch him playing and you're thinking, that's a different player.
Yeah, he looked that way.
And to let him, and it just tells you the quality of club he's away to.
Well, I know.
It tells you that there's people in big clubs thinking he's a good player.
Yeah,
and that's why
listen,
he took him.
Let's just bring in Derek McGregor and John McGarry now, guys. How's it going? How are you?
Hi, Mark. Hi, Murdo.
Yep, good to see you. Listen, guy, just let's go back to Neil and his after-match comments. He had to go at the players, and he singled out Leigh Griffiths. Derek, I mean, was he right to call it the players, and is he right to single out Leigh Griffiths? He's been a player who's been on the receiving end, a blast before, but once again he's getting it in the neck when there's so many others that are underperforming as well.
I think regards Leigh Griffiths, I actually thought it was more of a throwaway remark about Leigh Griffiths. In terms of generally calling out the players, I mean, I think when you're losing to a team at home for the first time in 31 years, I think a manager's entitled to be angry. But, I was listening to Murdo several minutes ago when he was saying that obviously Neil's attacks on the players are becoming fairly regular. And I think a big problem for Neil, and possibly for some time, is I think the players probably have it in their minds now that he's not going to be manager. Certainly not, for next season, and possibly not even, till the end of the season. And as such, they probably don't see him as having really authority. So whenever he decides to have a go, I think, the concern for Neil would be that the players are just switching off because they don't really believe that he's going to be the long-term manager anyway.
Well, that's a problem right away. Is it not? I mean, that's untenable then. If you're the manager and your employees or the people that are working under you kind of switch off and think you're not going to be here, that's the beginning of the end, surely.
I think that's going to be the perception, Mark, and obviously a lot of the coverage of it, a lot of the coverage of Celtic's current situation, I think beyond this season, no one is reporting that Neil's going to be the manager after that. So I think it's inevitable. And both yourself and Murdo will know far better than I or John about a professional footballer's mindset. I think quite a few of the players in that dressing room are probably thinking, well, he's not going to be the manager for much longer anyway, so, so what? If he says what he is, so what?
Yeah. John, just on Leigh Griffiths, John, has there been too many false dawns from him? I don't think anybody can deny he's an outstanding talent, but is Neil Lennon right to say, well, this guy has been given so many chances and he just keeps letting people down?
The remarkable thing about Leigh Griffiths is that no matter what you say about him, you look at Celtic's all-time scorers chart, there's only 19 players in the history of the club who've scored more goals. He's a phenomenal goal scorer. However, always comes back to the fact that he could have done so much more. In this season, with him coming back out of shape and overweight, unfortunately, while the flack has undoubtedly been centred on the hierarchy of the club and the manager, the players have to take responsibility for what's happened as well. And he's probably as culpable as anybody. I mean, he wasn't able to start a domestic game until December the 23rd against Ross County. I mean, that's just unacceptable for a professional athlete. And, you know, we keep hearing the talk from him about, you know, when I get a run of games, etc. By the time he's up to speed, the league was long gone, you know, and he's not up to speed as it stands anyway, you know. So his contribution this season has been entirely unacceptable. The problem for him is that 3 or 4 years ago, when this kind of a cycle was still underway, he was, you know, 26, 27. He's now 30, and the lifestyle catches up with you. You know, when you get to that point in time, it gets harder.
I know that.
The injuries come, the half yard goes, and it's hard to escape the notion that, you know, when a new manager comes in, and it is a matter of when, I'll be very surprised if Leigh Griffiths is part of the plans.
John, you're talking about Leigh Griffiths there, and you're watching him throughout the whole season, coming on with 15 minutes to go, and every Celtic fan thinks he's going to score. You know, the goal at St Johnstone, you know, he comes on, he gets the goal, happens again, and then we're still hearing the fitness thing. Surely every football player in Britain has got to be fit during their football season. So what's happened with all the guys, all the fitness guys at Celtic Park? How can they sit back and say, yeah, Leigh's, it's a fitness issue just now? Surely to goodness, you'd spend maybe 2 weeks in the summer in your holidays, then you come back, you'd be running the streets, getting yourself fit, come back for pre-season training, you're fit as a fiddle, they start playing games, and then that's you're flying for the whole season. And now here we are at the end of the season, and there's still a fitness issue.
Well, look here, listen, Graham Welsh disagrees. Leigh Griffiths, one of the better players at present. Disgrace he is being singled out. But it's what you say, Murdo. You can't rely on him to be in that starting lineup every week. He seems to be in about the squad for a couple of weeks, then he disappears with some
I can
form
understand
of mysterious injury.
About that, saying he'd been singled out, but surely you've got to get yourself fit.
Yeah, no,
do you know
listen,
what I mean? And I don't know, I said it earlier on, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You know, what's the fitness level? Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? But people are saying, oh, he's overweight and all that kind of thing.
Well, there's a responsibility in both parts. Obviously, as a coaching team and Celtic have got many fitness coaches there. They're very, very privileged to have that. And they can give him work. Yeah. If the player himself doesn't do the work, then there's not much you can do, and that leads to, I suppose, abject performances on the pitch, and that's what Neil's getting at. Guys, let's look at some of the summer signings, because you're right, John, when you mentioned the players, because we've on this podcast we've touched on everything at the club through the past few weeks. We've touched on Peter Lawwell, we've chatted about the directors, we've chatted about the manager, the coaching team, head of recruitment, but you're right in terms of the players have to take a lot of responsibility as well. And the summer signings, let's have a look at them. And the big three, you've got to say Barkas, Ayeti and Duffy must be in excess of £14 million. It's been disastrous when you look at those three. And look, let me just read out on Shane Duffy. Quote from Tom English on the BBC last night. Tom, one of the best journalists in the business, and here was his take on the central defender. Duffy has been a disaster. If the reported fee he has cost the club in wages and loan fee are accurate, then there's a compelling case to say he's possibly one of the worst signings in Scottish football history. John, what do you make of those comments?
I would go along with that. There's something about the whole Shane Duffy disaster that to me just doesn't add up. Here's a guy who was voted Brighton's Player of the year after they were promoted, Republic of Ireland captain. We've seen him perform to levels where you think this guy's a decent player albeit with the likes of Brighton, very often it's what you might call kind of siege defending, whereas at Celtic, obviously, there's going to be more space in behind you. But from the word go, he has just looked just miles off it. There's been no time.
But see that, John, sorry to interrupt you. See, you're totally right about the siege defending, and I've made that point myself about how Shane Duffy looks like a penalty box defender, or when it goes long, he's your man to go and head the ball away and clear his lines and do all that old-fashioned nonsense centre-half stuff. But he isn't he? We've seen on Saturday that at the edge of his own box, he looks like
the thing is Saturday for the winning goal for St Mirren, when you're running into the box chasing a striker and the ball's coming in, what you're doing, the centre half, you're running side on, you're watching the ball, and then the ball's coming in, and then you make your decision where you're going to attack the ball, where you're going to head to the ball. He was turned facing his goalkeeper and not watching the ball, and it allowed the centre forward to take a touch and smash the ball into the net, and he was nowhere near him, nowhere to block the challenge. Yeah,
John, sorry to interrupt. On you go again.
No, I think you've seen players who have arrived at a club and maybe don't have a kind of stellar reputation. Shane Duffy did come with a reputation. He was an international football player who's played in English Premier League, and but his performances just they just don't add up. He looks just completely lost. I mean, they've tried taking him out of the team. They've tried putting him back in. I asked Neil Lennon yesterday if he was mindful to take him back out again. He kind of, as you'd expect, he's not going to reveal his team, but clearly he said there would be changes for the game tonight. But I have to say, it's been so bad from him. I'm surprised that they didn't try to press ahead and get someone like Nottingham Forest to take him for the latter half of the season, because the guy just looks as if he's completely caught in the wrong movie.
Yeah, he looks shot, and Davy Boy, Clandonald dare say, Shane Duffy has given away 10 goals alone. And that is the alarming thing. Now, that stat may be correct or incorrect. However, if he's playing bad, it's fine. But a lot of his errors are leading to goals that are punishing Celtic. Let's move on to another two then. First of all, let's go for Barkas, Derek. I mean, initially I'm thinking, who scouted him? What was the situation to bring Barkas in? To spend £5 million on a goalkeeper is pretty exceptional for Scottish football standards.
It's a lot of money.
But to the full situation, how it's played out, after the podcast last week and after the game, Neil made the decision that whatever happened from Livy away to Hamilton at home, Barkas all of a sudden is now his number one goalkeeper. He says at the start of January he was going to give him a chance, and that's been changed, and now Bain's in. How does it get to that situation? Who looks into that? Who brought him to the club? Is that Nicky Hammond?
I think the feeling was, Mark, that they had been impressed with him during the Champions League qualifier against AEK Athens, and had kind of, I think, made a note of him, possibly for future reference, that that he was maybe one to watch if in the future they were looking for a goalkeeper. And of course, once the deal for Fraser Foster fell through, which, when you think about it, was almost like the start of Celtic's demise this season. I think that was such a crushing blow not to get Fraser Foster back. But the minute that didn't happen, I think they quickly looked at the other options. I think Joe Hart was very briefly considered. I think that was more about agents pushing Joe Hart than Celtic really being that interested. But then, obviously, they start considering Barkas. Now, you're right, £5 million for a goalkeeper is extraordinary for Celtic. And I think a lot of people, were astounded that Peter Lawwell was prepared to sanction that kind of amount of money for a goalkeeper, particularly when you had David Marshall that was available for considerably cheaper. Certainly older, but I think a feeling also at the time was that Peter was possibly put off by the lack of a resale value. Now, how false economy is that? I mean, I think obviously the benefit of hindsight is wonderful, and Barkas has since proved to be a dreadful signing, but I think Marshall, would have been a safer bet, no question. prior to coming onto the podcast, Mark, I was looking at Barkas's statistics, and up until the first Derby defeat of the season, he was steady enough. He was okay. I saw a number of his performances. I think it was Dundee United at Tannadice and Ross County up at Dingwall, and he was okay. He actually, I can confirm, he made a couple of saves. Nothing spectacular.
Breaking news.
But I think up until the first Derby defeat, Celtic had 1 defeat in 12, and Barkas actually had 4 clean sheets in a row going into that first Derby game. He's then subsequently lost a poor goal from the Goldson header, and ever since then, his demise has been extraordinary. And I think if you check the stats, I think he's officially 6'2", but when you actually watch him play for Celtic, it's almost like he's the incredible shrinking goalkeeper. The goals just seem to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, Chris Dolmouth here, agrees with the point you made at the start. The scouting involved in the Barkas signing was the 2 games we played against AEK Athens. Now, on the face of it, it's kind of looking like that. Now, you'd like to think a wee bit more goes into signing a goalkeeper than that, but just with the resale value, it's a question that I've been thinking. Is there certain positions that Celtic just need to give up resale value?
Yeah.
Goalkeeper being one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, instead of thinking, how much can we sell this guy for down the line? Just get a steady guy in like David Marshall and forget resale value. I know they did it with Fraser Forster and things like that,
but that was a big point, and a lot of the Celtic fans were hoping that Fraser Forster was going to be signed again at Celtic. Doesn't matter, but he was earning a lot of money down south and all this kind of thing. But you watch Fraser Forster in a football match, and he can win you the game.
Yeah.
With some of his saves, and just watching it, fans watching it, thinking, "What a save!"
Aye.
Barkas, I don't think at any time since he's arrived that a Celtic fan said, "What a save!"
What an outstanding
Everything
save.
ends up in the back of the net.
Yeah. Listen, let's move on then to another player who's hugely disappointed, another one of the big 3, Albion Ayeti. Now, John, I just wonder if there's enough due diligence done on these guys. I mean, it's easy for us to sit here and go, oh, well, it's not worked out, but it cost, £5 million or near enough £5 million. And I was looking at his stats today. He went to West Ham for around about 8 million, 8.5 million off the back of a good season at Basel. But he hardly kicked the ball for West Ham. And surely, I mean, David Moyes being the manager, surely you'd I don't know, make the call and say, is this guy going to come up here and set this league on fire? I know signings are a gamble, but you still expect better for that return for a striker coming to Scotland.
What I found surprising about this deal was that initially it was touted as it would be a kind of a 1-year loan with an option to buy. And that seemed to be sensible. That's what Celtic did with Odsonne Edouard. They liked what they saw. They paid the money. Then it became accelerated to the point where Celtic were prepared to pay the money up front. And there was then no comeback for this guy. He actually, I thought, initially looked pretty decent. I saw him against Livingston. He liked the play nicely. He scored a couple of goals. He thought if he gets around the team here, he did look as if he had something. But
he scored 5 in his first 9, didn't he? And everyone thought, like you're saying there, wow, this is the real deal here.
Yeah. But, you can't help thinking that, I know it was a kind of injury-plagued season at West Ham, but you just wonder if a lot of the, perhaps it's an attitude thing behind the scenes, but he doesn't seem to me to have the kind of the hunger. Anytime I have seen him since that initial kind of flurry, and it has been quite rare. I've not liked his body language, when they've lost games. To me, he doesn't look as if he's a guy that's going to go in and kind of do the dirty stuff. And he just doesn't look like a kind of 25, 30 goal a season striker. He's certainly never going to be as instinctive as someone like Leigh Griffiths is. But again, it's been a big outlay. I think just to get back to the point about Barkas, there is an obsession at Celtic with this kind of buy low, sell high model, and that's fine. But I think in the midst of all that, it's almost overlooked that you've got to sign players of some pedigree. Patrick Klimala, Celtic won't get that money back for him. Fundamentally, the first question isn't what are you paying for him? Can this guy play? Can we develop him over 2 or 3 years? and then sell him on. That just seems to have been that fundamental point seems to have been lost.
Yeah. But John, is this not the most important season for this club to go and get 10 in a row? And surely if you're going to bring in players and spend a lot of money, you've got to bring in top quality players. It's going to make it the season so much easier. Go and win all the games. I think this was the most important season to do it, and it's not happened.
Well, look, here's Dons are saying about the recruitment just before, Derek, Nick Hammond should have been sacked a long time ago, but as usual, the board did nothing. So, I mean, he's obviously played a part in these signings, whether he scouted them or whether it's his team that scouts them. But they have spent money, Murdo.
Yeah,
but who they've identified just haven't been good enough. When you go, Derek,
I think it's about. I think, Mark Murdo. I think sure you want investment, but by and large, you just want to bring in the right players. And I think if you look at Celtic's history over the last 20 years, going back further, some of Celtic's best ever signings have been the ones that have been the cheapest and they've got the best value from. I mean, even if you go, wait, I mean, it's almost ancient history now, but the centenary double season, Rangers were spending absolute fortunes. And arguably the best signing of the season was Billy Stark at £75,000. And then if you move further on, fast forward, Lubo Moravcik, 300,000, 33-year-old, tremendous. Chris Commons, 300,000. Remember they brought Stan Varga in a free transfer, who for 2 years was outstanding for Celtic. So clearly that then gets back to the recruitment chief or your chief scout, whatever you want to call him. But it's not always just about spending money. It's actually just get the right player. And as we were suggesting there in the goalkeeping department, David Marshall just seemed such an obvious bet. It seemed such an obvious signing to make. He knew the environment, he knew the pressure, and he was available for a bargain price. And that is one of the catastrophic decisions of the season, not to go for it.
Guys, just coming in here, exclusive news, and listen to this one, quite interesting. Olivier Ntcham obviously went to Marseille on loan. Andreas Villas-Boas has just offered his resignation because he apparently didn't want Ntcham, and it looks like he's on his way. Now that's quite interesting. Who brought Ntcham in? Ntcham was quite an interesting one for me. I think there was trouble surrounding Ntcham for a number of years. And Neil called it out after Ferencváros. Number of players don't want to be here. He continued to play Ntcham for some reason, even knowing this. You know, he played week after he gave away the penalty up at Pataudry, and it was another poor performance from him. And then they've managed to shift him, because I think that's what it is. I don't think it's a club, you know, coming. They've managed to get him out, but there you go. A manager who doesn't want Ntcham has offered his resignation. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that's the way a lot of the football clubs are run now. That someone's just coming up and going to buy a player. The board are happy, the scouts are happy, and then all of a sudden you're left with a player you don't want, and that causes a friction in the dressing room, because if you're there, and then even someone from upstairs will come tap the manager on the shoulder and say, by the way, you've got to start playing this player. Yeah. If we get games out of him, then we can sell him on and all that kind of thing. All these kind of things come into play. But we spoke about Neil early on in the season when we were going through the bad run about the players that's arrived at Celtic Park. The big thing for Neil, did he make the kind of final decision on them? Has he seen them often enough to think he'll be a great player for Celtic, other than the scout coming saying, by the way, he'll be a great player for Celtic? The most important person when you're bringing in players is the manager.
It's the manager, no, of course. So quite interesting news, guys, that we're hearing there. But let's move on to Peter Lawwell. It's been the big story of the week after the podcast last week. And let's look at some of the media coverage on his departure and Don MacKay's appointment. Look, first of all, Peter's departure. Davy Provan in The Sun said Lawwell's legacy is not a pretty sight. With Rangers out of the picture for years, no Celtic board ever had it so good. Yet they've allowed Rangers up off the floor. The buck stops with Lawwell. He leaves behind a club in turmoil. John, what do you make of those comments? Has he really? Is that unfair?
I think at this point in time, anyone looking at Peter's legacy is probably going to arrive at a kind of similar view. I think in time, maybe a year or so down the line, people will take a kind of broader view of his 17 years at the club and will probably think over the piece, he did a pretty good job. It's just at this particular moment in time, it just doesn't look good for him, given the way this is all ended. You know, I mean, I tend to take a step back from it and look at it, and I think overall, I think he did a lot of good. I mean, you can't deny he was there when there were 29 domestic trophies were won. But you know, I tend to not look through it from a kind of domestic prism. I mean, I think if you look at it from a European perspective, when just after Peter came in, Celtic were in the quarterfinals of the then UEFA Cup against Villarreal, and by the time he left, they've never returned to that stage. They've had a few journeys to the last 16, but you know, the business end of the Champions League has become ever more distant in recent years. You know, I think it's like 4 appearances in 12 seasons. So I think over the piece, domestically, Celtic ruled the roost. In Europe, I don't think they in any way punched their weight in terms of what they could have been.
Yeah. And Derek, just for a bit of balance to that Davy Proven comments, Keith Jackson in the Daily Record said it's absurd that Lawwell has been effectively hounded out of office. Let's be blunt. Given what he's achieved, Lawwell ought to be carried out at shoulder height down London Road on a carpet of rose petals. So Keith Jackson obviously seen the good that he's done in terms of delivering trophies, revamping round about the stadium, so on, so forth. What's your thoughts on the whole situation?
I think as John was alluding to there, I think in time there'll probably be a better appreciation of the job that Peter's done for Celtic. I think inevitably, Mark, I think the season when Celtic are going for 10 in a row, and if it was going to be the case that it was going to fail, I mean, none of us, you know, foresaw how spectacularly it was going to fail. I think inevitably this season was always going to taint what has gone before. I think it'll be quite similar to Fergus McCann. I think, Mark, you know, Fergus McCann initially was kind of hounded out as well. That was extraordinary. But then as the years passed, people began to get more of an appreciation of what Fergus McCann had done exactly for Celtic. And I think that will be the same with Peter. I think John makes a very valid point about the European results and failures. I think a large part of that was just the extraordinary consistency every summer with Celtic, where the recruitment was seat of the pants, last minute, not right, you know, not quite everything put in place. There was nothing to suggest that from the January onwards they'd done a lot of planning, a lot of homework. When it came to the summer and the qualifiers, the team either wasn't quite ready or it lacked 1 or 2 positions that weren't strengthened. And it was only after a failure or a defeat that players started coming in. I think there were certain situations where Celtic certainly were strong enough to have dealt with it. They should have beat Ferencvaros, no question. But going back to my earlier point, I think overall, I think as time goes on, I think there'll be more of an appreciation for what Peter did for the club. I think particularly with the finances, the commercial deals, the financial stability, the financial strength.
Yeah. Murdo, what's your overriding feeling over Peter?
Well, I think, I go down the same line as Derek, because I think Peter Lawwell's it's been great for the football club. No, financially, he's got a lot of money in the bank, but Celtic supporters, when they're under a wee bit of pressure, they want him to spend it, but he wasn't doing that. But over the years, the club was getting stronger and stronger financially. The stadium was getting better everywhere. Everything was getting better. But this season, what a year to go.
Yeah.
But as I say, he was part of the start of this season. Everyone knew Celtic had to get the best top quality players they can into the club, and that's not happened. So Peter, it's like a kick in the The shins.
Kicking the wall. The shins.
Kicking the shins.
It's a podcast. You're allowed to say whatever you want, Murdo.
Oh, was it? No.
No, look,
but Peter, I think, was great for the club.
Well,
he turned the whole
got to say he presided over probably one of the greatest periods in the club's history. Yeah, you know,
he has. He's done all that. Been
so
part of it, all the trophies.
Yeah.
But at the time, and I think David Probbins said about the Rangers weren't in the picture and all that kind of thing. So it wasn't too.
He's
too
got his
hard.
feelings. There's no doubt about that.
But this was the year when he had to step forward and be the top man. Because by the way, I don't know whether he was going to retire thinking, I'm going to retire with 10 in a row on a high, and now it's the opposite.
Well, Don MacKay's coming in. Now, Peter's going to be a hard act to follow. So Gary Keown in the Mail on Sunday said, with MacKay's communication background, should see him move quickly to reconnect with the customer base and assess the damage from the recent protests in the car park to the tone-deaf PR shambles that mid-season trip to Dubai became. MacKay has been left a heck of a mess to fix. I mean, is he going to be able to fix it, John? Will it be simple stuff? Will it take a year or two rebuild, or will we see an instant impact from Don MacKay when he comes in?
I think it's you could hardly envisage more difficult circumstances to start a new job. You know, I think ideally he'd probably want to be starting tomorrow and to be given the next 2 or 3 months to have a look around the place. I don't think Dominic MacKay is the kind of man who's going to come in and immediately revolutionise the place. I don't think that's his style. I met him once and I was impressed with him. It was when the SRU were trying to get effectively Murrayfield to become the home of Scottish football, and they had us all through for a kind of a kickabout there and all that. And I must say I was quite taken with him. He's a kind of quite quiet man. He's quite a shrewd operator. I mean, if you look at this whole situation we're in at the moment, where there was all sports have been obviously starved of finance and be desperate to get supporters back in. Some football clubs have been kind of jumping up and down about it. Rugby kind of played their cards close to their chest. Dominic MacKay played his cards close to his chest. The upshot was, when the government came to handing out grants and loans, rugby did rather better out of it than football. And also, there were fans in Murrayfield before there were in any Scottish football ground. That's a lot to do with Dominic MacKay's approach, behind the scenes. So I don't think we're going to see a guy here who's going to say much in public, certainly not when it's uncalled for. He'll say things when he feels it's appropriate, but I don't think he'll have anything like the profile of Peter Lawwell. And if you look at the kind of structure that Celtic are apparently moving towards, I don't think there'll be quite the same call for him to have that profile anyway. But listen, although he would obviously like to evolve things, clearly this summer it was going to be one of huge transition anyway, and that's now going to be even more heightened given the scale of the problem. So he's going to have to come in and clearly appoint a new manager, probably a technical director, a director of football. Those are his priorities. But then it's kind of root and branch stuff after that. So his entry will be groaning. Yeah.
Derek, just Davy Provan, our last one for the day. Davy Provan said Dermot Desmond needs to find a time-served operator as a new manager. Any new manager must be allowed to pick his own backroom team without interference. That will require new chief exec Dominic MacKay to butt out of dressing room issues. So pretty much what John's saying there, you think he'll come in, it'll be a different structure. You think it'll be a kind of like what? Yeah, on you go. A European kind of structure.
I don't think Peter's been hounded out. I think Peter would have left in the summer anyway. I think even if 10 in a row was looking ever possible for Celtic, I think this summer was always going to be one of huge transition. Now, clearly replacing Peter for Dominic MacKay is a hell of a task. Peter is going to be leaving the scene generally regarded as the most powerful man in Scottish football. Now, obviously, when Peter first came in 17 years ago, it took him time to establish himself, not just at Celtic, but also within Scottish football circles, and to win respect, and over the years get that kind of aura of such a powerful individual. Dominic MacKay is going to have to do that himself. And I think it's been fascinating reading the reviews of the rugby writers about Dominic MacKay. I've never met him. I don't personally know him. The rugby writers certainly speak of him as a smooth operator. But I think one telling comment about Dominic MacKay was that he's going from an environment at the SRU that, regardless of how the Scotland rugby team is performing, there weren't riots outside. There weren't, people with banners outside. There weren't angry supporters outside demanding that he goes. He's now going to be coming into an environment that is hostile, to say the least, when it's not working. And he's going to have to adapt to that. And clearly understand he's a Celtic season ticket holder. He in his mind, he will be aware of the environment. But until he's actually in that seat, he's not going to know. So how he responds to that, I think there's going to be pressure on him right away. If he makes obvious mistakes right at the start, then he's already up against it, because then immediately perceptions will start to go into place that he's not the right man. It's a huge job for Dominic MacKay, no question.
Yeah. Listen, it is that, and it'll be watched with interest. You're right there, Derek. Every move he makes from the start of season, from the 1st of July, will be watched intensely by the Celtic fans. I mean, and like Neil Lennon's still the manager. Neil said just yesterday that he's no intentions of following Peter out the door, but Dominic MacKay might have a big decision to make in his first couple of weeks, so that'll be interesting to see. Guys, we'll just move on quickly to the game tonight. That's right, there is a game tonight against Kelly, and if it was any normal season for Celtic, we'd probably spend a wee bit more time in that, but things have been quite disappointing. We don't know what to expect. Murdo, what do we think?
Well, it's tough times for Kilmarnock as well. New manager, or looking for a new manager. It's always quite tough down there, with the plastic pitch and all that kind of thing. But I think, I've got to think it'll be a kind of comfortable victory tonight.
Yeah, Derek, predictions
I
tonight?
I don't think it'll be comfortable, if you forgive me for disagreeing with you, Murdo.
That's all right. I've been trying to say that all season.
I think I agree with you. I think it's always a challenge going to the plastic at Kilmarnock, and it's particularly, I think, a challenge for players' attitudes. And coming off the back of a weekend where Neil Lennon has called out his players so strongly about their attitudes, this is a particularly intriguing one. I think inevitably Kilmarnock, even having just lost their manager, I think the Kilmarnock players will, cynically, I think they'll raise their game right away. And I think any team that's playing Celtic at the moment smells blood. You would still expect Celtic to get the job done, but I think this could be another difficult night.
John, and will the Celtic players react to Neil Lennon having a real go, saying they've let him down? Will they react and win?
Well,
for only the second time since the new year.
He's had a go at him before, and it's made no difference. Listen, if Celtic show the same levels of application that they did on Saturday, I see no reason to think they will win the match, because there were people who just had, as far as I could see, had kind of thrown in the towels. So, the addition of John Joe Kenny might make some difference. You keep thinking it probably can't get any worse, but I think it's got a draw written all over it.
Well, that's not much better than can it get any worse, John. But listen, guys, thanks very much. Derek McGregor, John McGarry, thank you very much for joining us again. And that's us, Murdo. John. That's us for today. Interesting week yet again. Yeah. And fingers crossed it's a positive result. Another big week for Neil, and John Joe Kenny is the probably bright spark.
We wish him all the best.
Wish him all the best. People will be tuning in tonight, seeing if that's a bright spark that kind of can kickstart Celtic's season. Might be the first right back to do that since me back in 2011.
When did you arrive?
2006.
Well,
anyway, it was all going well at that point. But once again, thanks for listening to us on the Celtic Huddle podcast. Thanks to our sponsors once again: First Star, Legends Gin, Social Recluse, and First Class Transfers. Join us again next week.